May the 1st, 1994. A dark cloud hung over the Imola circuit, with the previous day's passing of Austrian Simtek driver Roland Ratzenberger. Despite concerns over safety expressed by Formula One's medical and safety delegate Sid Watkins, the Brazilian icon Ayrton Senna lined up on pole position in his Williams FW16, carrying an Austrian flag in his car, alongside the Benetton B194 of Michael Schumacher. Senna was unusually conflicted about racing that day, following Ratzenberger's passing and the accident of his friend and compatriot Rubens Barrichello. The previous night, Senna had conversed with Williams boss Sir Frank Williams, whom advised him not to race. This was Senna, however, who believed he had a God-given right to win. And this, coupled with the fact that he had started the season with 2 non-finishes, meaning he trailed Schumacher by 20 points, meant there was no stopping Senna from racing that day. Come race day, Ayrton was visibly not his usual self. Instead of speaking with his mechanics, he was pensive and withdrawn, only speaking to his great rival Alain Prost on the need to re-establish the Grand Prix Drivers Association. The race began with the start line accident, as the Benetton of JJ Leto stalled, causing the unsighted Lotus of Pedro Lamy to collide into him, bringing out the safety car. After the safety car ended on lap 6, Senna set off, with Schumacher chasing him, but on lap 7, entering the fearsome Tamburello bend at 190 miles an hour, the steering column of Senna's car broke, which could only slow him down to 130 miles an hour, and into the concrete wall. Fragments of his front right wheel pierced his helmet, causing head injuries, which he would immediately succumb to, despite the best efforts of Imola's medical team, and Bologna's Maggiore Hospital to resuscitate him. But what if we could take it back? What if the fragments had not pierced his head? How would it affect Senna's legacy? How would it affect the world of Formula One? As we are about to see, there are a lot of changes. We're going to assume that Senna sustains a concussion, which keeps him out for 3 races, returning at the French Grand Prix. Although Senna would want an immediate return, his good friend and renowned neurosurgeon Professor Sid Watkins would deem him unsafe to drive. The period in between altered slightly, with David Coulthard stepping in a race early at Monaco, rather than the following race in Spain, and Nigel Mansell stepping in when he did not race in IndyCar. I believe this would happen, as Coulthard recounts that Senna had been pleased with the Scots' feedback during testing, and thus would not be too opposed to this temporary move. Monaco would largely remain the same, with Carl Wendlinger sustaining a career-ending injury, and Schumacher winning from Brundle and Berger. Following the race, Niki Lauda would announce the reformation of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, with changes in regulations, but this time with Senna as an additional representative. The Spanish and Canadian Grand Prix would also play out similarly, however this time, Coulthard, with an extra race under his belt, would secure 4th place rather than 5th. Senna would return in France, securing a 2nd row start, but retiring due to a gearbox issue. Senna would also struggle at Silverstone, coming in a lowly 6th, still suffering slight psychological effects and being unhappy with the balance of his Williams. Senna would strike back at Hockenheim, claiming a stunning pole position over Berger, and converting it for his first win for Williams, waving the Austrian flag he had had in his car for the checkered flag, and putting the Formula One world on notice that the King had returned. However, Schumacher had other ideas, and would claim his 7th win of the season in Hungary, ahead of the 2 Williams of Senna and Hill. Sorry Jos Verstappen, your first podium is going to have to wait a little longer. Well, not much longer actually, as the Belgian Grand Prix plays out similarly, with Hill winning from Hakkinen and Verstappen, Schumacher being disqualified, and Senna retiring due to engine issues. With 5 races to remain, Senna was out of the running for the World Championship, but was fueled by his will to win, angering teammate Damon Hill, who was still in the running for the World Championship, as Senna took the next 2 races from Hill, while Schumacher was banned for not using a fuel filter on his fuel valve, which sped up pit stops. So Frank Williams would intervene, ensuring Senna would remain behind Hill where possible. Senna begrudgingly agreed, recognising that putting his focus into the Constructors' Championship would help with the development of the 1995 car, which was subject to a raft of new regulations. This would have a stunning effect at the next race in Jerez, with Senna holding up Schumacher in the first round of pit stops, allowing Hill to take victory. A masterful drive by Hill at Suzuka left the championship in the balance, with Schumacher ahead by a mere 1 point. Senna took pole at Adelaide, demolishing Schumacher and Hill by the 6/10 of a second, but a poor start dropped Senna to 2nd, behind Schumacher, with Hill tailing them both. On lap 36, Schumacher would make the same error at turn 5, but unlike with Hill in the actual race, Senna would be patient, recognising Schumacher's right rear axle would not be lasting much longer. Senna would be correct, with Schumacher parking to the side, as Senna takes the lead. Remember, at this point, Senna had a decade's worth of Formula One experience, and was one of the most intelligent drivers, despite his ruthless streak. Senna would take the checkered flag ahead of Hill and would win his first World Championship, leaving an incensed Schumacher wanting vengeance. Williams would also take the Constructors' title from Benetton. The only slight difference in the Constructors' Championship is Ligier dropping down to 8th, and Tyrrell and Sauber moving up to 6th and 7th respectively. Entering the following season, there was one major change to the starting grid. In the real 1995 season, David Coulthard had another year with Williams, but in this scenario, as Williams have retained both Senna and Hill, Coulthard will replace Marc Blundell at McLaren. Remember, McLaren wanted to replace Blundell for Mansell, but Mansell's asking price was far beyond what McLaren was willing to pay. Thus Coulthard would enter McLaren and partner Mika Häkkinen a season early. Blundell instead would head off a year early to kart racing. The other driver changes down the grid would remain the same. Schumacher would enter the new season with a new fire in his soul. His mind set on one goal, winning the championship that slipped from his grasp the year before. But it was Senna who would take the spoils at the opening race, in front of a delirious home crowd ahead of the two Benettons. Then it was Hill who would strike back in Argentina, with Coulthard taking a surprise first podium for McLaren. Schumacher, despite leading the championship, demanded a team meeting, and to find out what exactly had gone on and why Williams had taken the first two races. This galvanised the Benetton team, and Schumacher took dominant wins at Imola and Jerez. This appeared to be Schumacher's year, after starting off with 2 wins and 2 second places, but Senna had other ideas. Pulling out a scintillating lap at his beloved Monaco, he would complete an easy lights to flag victory, throwing down the gauntlet to Schumacher and Benetton. Schumacher would not be able to respond in Canada, with Senna again proving his mastery in the rain. Sorry John and Lacey, no first win for you. Schumacher was now incandescent with rage. Channeling this fury, 3 consecutive wins followed, as the Williams team was suddenly dumbfounded at the emergence of pace from the Benetton team, with Johnny Herbert also scoring good points. At half distance in the season, there was a clear establishment of who were the number 1 drivers in the top 2 teams, with Senna and Schumacher duking it out in the battle of master and apprentice, with Benetton appearing to have an edge. But after the summer break, the tables turned, with the Williams 1-2 in Hungary, and Hill taking the victory after the Benettons hit tyre trouble. This was followed by wins for Senna at Spa and Estoril, sandwiching a Herbert win in Monza. The momentum was now with Williams and Senna. A 4th world title beckoned. And that is what would occur, as Senna's intensity increased to a new level, seizing his chance to match his great rival Alain Prost, taking victory in 3 of the last 4 races, to bridge the deficit to Schumacher and help Williams to another Constructors' title. The beginning of the 1996 season had one major question. Where would Michael Schumacher go? In the real 1996 season, Schumacher would go to Ferrari to return glory to the prancing horse, but he had already won 2 world championships then. In this scenario however, Schumacher signs a lucrative 1-year deal to stay with Benetton, stating he had unfinished business. Herbert also stays at Benetton, due to Berger staying with Ferrari, and De Lacy also stays put. Bouillon, Irvine and Brundle would also stay in their current seats. What of Jacques Villeneuve? He has to stay in kart racing for a bit longer, as Williams is satisfied with their current pairing of Hill and Senna, who had carried them to a 4th consecutive Constructors' Championship. The driver and team changes further down the grid remain the same. The other noticeable piece of news in the off-season is the beginning of testing of the HANS device, used to protect the driver from head injuries, such as the one suffered by Ratzenberger. Imola would now not be part of the 96 season, as despite alterations to the Tamburello corner in 95, the FIA still had safety concerns over the barriers of the circuit. Heading into the first race at Melbourne's Albert Park, one thing looked clear. Williams were the pace setters. Senna continued his up form from the previous year, where he had won 5 of the last 7 races, leading him at Williams 1-2, with Schumacher in 4th, but drastically off the pace of not just the Williams duo, but also the Ferrari of Berger. Already, it appeared as if Schumacher was beginning to regret his decision to not go to Ferrari. He would halt Senna's momentum at Senna's home turf. But again, the Benettons were nowhere to be found, with Ferrari, Tyrrell, McLaren and even Ligier appearing to be on par, or perhaps surpassing them. Senna would regain his form in the next 2 Grand Prix, taking easy victories from Hill, and Schumacher finally getting on the rostrum in 96 at his home Grand Prix. Panis still gets his maiden win at Monaco, and Berger takes Ferrari's first win of the season in Spain. Schumacher's patience had run out. After 2 consecutive non-point scoring finishes, he drastically announced before the 7th round in Canada that he would be leaving Benetton at the end of the season. Even more shocking is that after Schumacher got his first win of the season, Benetton and McLaren pulled off a blockbuster trade, sending the underperforming David Coulthard to Benetton to partner his fellow Brit Johnny Herbert and Michael Schumacher to McLaren, in what promised to be a tantalising pairing between Schumacher and Häkkinen. McLaren boss Ron Dennis had always been a fan of Schumacher, attempting to lure him to McLaren as early as 1993. Also, Coulthard at this point, despite not having won races, was still regarded as a top prospect, particularly in the eyes of the drivers, so this looks to be a good move for both teams. Schumacher was eager to get going at McLaren, but recognised that the team would need some serious time and help before providing him with a championship level car. Schumacher was also keen to work with Häkkinen, the enigmatic Finn whom he respected before he entered Formula 1, and knew would bring the best out of him. For now though, it was Williams who are on top, with everyone in their rearview mirrors, winning the next 4 races, with Senna and Hill taking 2 apiece, and the Constructors' Championship in Hungary. Meanwhile, it is the Benettons in fact which have had a better run over this period, scoring good points, with Coulthard in particular impressing, taking 2 podiums. The McLarens meanwhile struggle, scrapping for points as they look forward to the 97 car. The next 2 rounds at Spa and Monza saw the maiden win for Ferrari's John and Lacey, and a surprising win for Häkkinen at Monza, as well as the first points of the season for the Sauber drivers. There would be no dramatic title decider Suzuka, as Senna wrapped up a record-equalling 5th Drivers' Championship at the site of his very first victory in Estoril, equalling the late great Juan Manuel Fangio, dominating the whole field. He would console himself with victory in Suzuka, wondering what he needed to do to be his illustrious teammate. The only notable change in the Constructors' Championship is McLaren sneaking ahead of Benetton into 3rd, assisted by the addition of Schumacher. Whereas the 1996 Prix season was about the destination of Schumacher, the 97 season was about the 2 Williams drivers. Senna re-signed on a 1-year extension for Williams, but Hill was released due to a contract dispute. In the original timeline, Williams opted for Heinz-Harald Frentzen due to his impressive performances for Sauber and being likened to Michael Schumacher. In this scenario however, it is Rubens Barrichello who signs for Williams after demolishing his teammate Eddie Irvine, with Frank Williams hoping Senna could mentor his fellow Brazilian. Williams had been tempted to sign Villeneuve, but were dissuaded after a poor 96 season in kart. Originally, it went to Arrows, as McLaren's Ron Dennis had promised to sign him in the 98 season in place of Häkkinen, but given Häkkinen's impressive form in 96, Hill in fact signs for Ferrari, in place of Berger, who signs for Benetton in his final year in Formula 1, displacing Herbert. Herbert moves to the newly formed Stewart team, and Irvine moves to Arrows, partnering Diniz, but on a lesser contract than Hill's in the original timeline. Frentzen stays at Sauber, and the changes down the rest of the grid remain the same. Entering the first race of the season in Australia, it looked to be closer than the 96 season, with Williams ahead, but only marginally. Senna took a lights to flag victory, but behind him was a battle foreshadowing the rest of the season between Barrichello, the Ferraris, McLaren and Benetton, with Häkkinen and Hill rounding out the podium positions. Brazil and Argentina saw much of the same, as Senna, despite being 37 years old, was outperforming the rest of the field, with his younger team of Barrichello beginning to justify his move to Williams. Barrichello would pick up his maiden win at Imola, following a gearbox problem with Senna, and the McLarens were showing flashes of the pace that had been promised to Schumacher. Senna was furious at being denied victory, and rattled off victories at Monaco and Spain, with the Ferraris edging out the McLarens, with Hill still simmering over his dispute with Williams, impressing. Ferrari would finally break Williams' streak with back-to-back wins in Canada and France, with the McLaren slightly off the pace. Senna would strike back in Britain and Hungary, with the Benettons taking the spoils behind him, and the win in Germany. After a win for Barrichello at Spa, and a memorable win for Lacey in front of the Tifosi, it would be Schumacher's turn to finally taste victory at Austria, hoping this would be a sign of things to come. For now though, it was Senna's time, taking his 8th victory of the season in Luxembourg and becoming a 6-time world champion, being in sole possession of the record for the most Drivers' Championships won, and fulfilling his divine potential. He then announced that he would be leaving Williams at the end of the season, although what he would do next had not been decided. Häkkinen would show off his talents, ignoring team orders to overtake Schumacher and taking victory at Suzuka, enraging the German, whom had been on good terms with the Finn. The tension was brewing in the McLaren team, as Ron Dennis attempted to wrestle control of his 2 drivers, like a father with 2 unruly children. At the last race of the season in Jerez, Senna ceded the win to Barrichello, as a token of gratitude for helping him and Williams win their respective championships. Senna was now, undisputedly, the greatest F1 driver of all time, with nothing left to prove. Yet something still itched him, something in red. That is it for part 1 of What If Ayrton Senna Never Died. If you'd like to see a part 2, please like this video, and if you're new to this channel, subscribe for more tips. And as always, please comment on what if you'd like to see next. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.